I'm afraid of heights. You would think it doesn't have much to do, being a computer engineer. I mean, where would I use that fear of heights? What should I really be afraid of? But as part of my work, that little dot up there, that's me. And so is that. So is that. I even took a course to be able to rescue people off of towers if it's necessary. I hope it's never necessary. And the reason for that is because you usually have two people up on a tower at any given time. If something happens, one can help the other. The reason I did that was because of my work as a technician for the United Nations, as part of which I would have to climb towers, as you already saw, install servers, put up power generators for offices in disaster areas, that are set up quickly, satellite communications, all sorts of communications, and all sorts of power, whatever it takes. And the fun part is that I would do this job in all sorts of weird locations, usually during or immediately after some kind of disaster, whether it be a war, like this in South Sudan, or a hurricane, like the one in the Philippines, or a tsunami, or an earthquake, whatever. But it's usually something that takes people's lives and devastates lives of others. So I worked for FitTest. It's an elite unit. There's only 12 guys covering the entire planet, and it's a part of the World Food Program of the United Nations. The reason it's part of the World Food Program is because whatever kind of emergency happens, people will always need food, and WFP will always be involved. So as part of that, they set up this unit, and they set it up in Dubai, from where it's relatively easy to get to most of Asia and Africa, where the disasters most commonly occur that need help. Something would happen, we would sit on a plane, get there. What happens once you're there? You have to move around. You have to get from point A to point B. And that's not always easy, so you use whatever you can. You use vehicles, helicopters, motorcycles, airplanes, horses sometimes, donkeys, whatever you can get your hands on. And once you know what's what and you've seen the locations, then it's time to move the goods. You have to move the food, you have to move the equipment. So you use trucks, if you can, in convoys, airplanes. Sometimes you even rely on human power for those hard-to-reach areas that have no accessibility by vehicle. Now, you're there, the goods are there, you have to find a place to store them. That's usually some kind of warehouse, a temporary warehouse most of the time. This is on pallets, on the grass, in a tent, like those. And this is to prevent the stuff from getting wet if it rains, from it getting looted by desperate human beings, which you will always find in such situations. But the key for all of this to function is communications. Because without communications, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You wouldn't be able to tell who needs to go where and bring what and do what and so on. So the telecoms is usually the first thing that happens in an emergency. In 2013, I found myself in the Philippines in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan, or Yolanda, as they called it in the West, because we can't pronounce it. And the devastation was huge. I mean, the hurricane, which measured winds of up to 320 kilometers per hour, just tore everything up. And at some point, it even created a tsunami in between the airport and the city. As you can see, it moved huge ships inland. It devastated houses, basically cutting them in half. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of people who needed assistance. Something like 15,000 people maybe died in that one event. So I found myself sitting on a plane the next morning out of Dubai to Manila. In Manila, we sort of hitchhiked three of us, a ride with the US Marine Corps. These are the Osprey planes. They're the fun ones that can fly both as an airplane and as a helicopter by moving the rotors. And they were the only ones who could land. So we had to go with them. And we brought as much equipment as we could. And this is the situation we had to deal with. We had to set up communications so that everybody who would follow us in would be able to organize what they want to do, where they want to land, what kind of goods they want to bring, and so on. Initially, it took us 4.5 hours to travel the 11 kilometers between the airport and the city hall where we set up our office initially. And, well, because of all the dead bodies in the street, all the destruction, everything, it was really slow moving. So I had an idea. I saw a bike at the end of the road. One of these motoconcho-like things. I'm sure you all know about them. So I just, well, made it run. And then I used it for a couple of days to be able to go and visit all the different locations where, you know, where are we going to sleep? Where are we going to store the goods? Where are we going to put up the antennas? And that worked out great. At some point, I also had this idea that this is an island, and they used to have internet before, so there's probably some sort of underwater cable connecting the islands. And asking around, after I was mobile, I was able to move around and ask people. And I got to this one tower, which was really close to where the cable was coming out of the sea. So what we did was we connected this cable, put up a microwave antenna on the tower, pointed it to this building that we had rented, 8 floors, and put up a receiver on the other side. Wasn't fun, 8 floors up and down all the time with no electricity. But we had a 300 megabit link, which is more than enough. People were able to Skype with their families, they were able to teleconference with whoever was involved, and that worked out great. That link cost me a 6-pack of beer. Seriously. I went up there and I talked to the technicians, and they were like, yeah, I don't know, we'd have to talk to the boss, but we cannot talk to the boss because the phone lines are down, and this and that, and here comes the beer. Let's have a few. Let's take the discussion again. Still not ready. Have another beer. All right, we got the job, we got it up and running, we promised to take it down if the bosses said they don't want it. But in the end, it worked out great. They gave it to us for free, the local telephone company. The mayor of the city of Tacloban actually gave me a motorcycle, which I put stickers on. And I was using that until the end of the mission. And by the end of the mission, I mean, we got so friendly with the private sector, with the army, I could hitchhike a flight on a Huey to move stuff from point A to point B, and that was pretty cool. So anyways, at a couple of points during this whole mission, there were some doubts. There were some doubts about whether I'm being too reckless, riding around on a motorcycle with no insurance, with no helmet, with no local driving license. Same thing with the helicopters. And then, you know, there was this balance whether, yeah, it's working, let's continue doing it, or it's not 100% safe, let's not do it. There was this calculated risk there. Coming out of there, we usually have debriefings where we discuss what went wrong during a mission, what went right, and so on. And when asked about all of these things that happened, I said it was luck. It was just pure blind luck that I saw this cable, and it was pure luck that we found this hotel that was empty, and pure luck that there was this motorcycle by the road and that I was able to get it running. And at some point, one of the bosses said, no, man, you're wrong. It's not luck. It's an opportunity that you saw and recognized as an opportunity. It's the guts you had to act right then and there, without asking us for permission, without going through different time zones, all the bureaucracy and everything, right? And basically, you made your own luck. Those were the words he said. This mission cemented my reputation as a fixer within the team, because I would get things done. One way or another, things would just happen. And the next major mission I was in 2015 in Kathmandu. There was a huge earthquake, about 8 point something, and a lot of people were injured. There was a lot of damage to the town, and even worse, up in the mountains. And getting from point A to point B was almost impossible. This is the foot of the Himalayas, people. You can imagine, it's all mountains and canyons and stuff. So I was the first one on the ground, partly because the previous planes were all turned around because they couldn't land at the Kathmandu airport. My pilot was luckily stubborn, and he just circled around the airport for a while being 5 hours, and we weren't sure we could even make it to the closest airport. But then it opened up and we landed, and I was there the day after the earthquake. So immediately I started looking around how to set up communications, and we used whatever we could. This is a picture of a bus which I climbed on so that I could fix an HF antenna on 2 strings between that light pole and another one that you can't see here. That's a satellite dish that was mounted and put up on top of a transport container. And it worked. 2 megabit link, more than enough. Other locations were more difficult because of all the mountains. You have to place it in very specific positions, the satellites, because otherwise you can't see the satellite from the mountains, and those are the tallest mountains on the planet. And in some cases, we even use some very extravagant transportation means. That's an elephant. Seriously, it's huge. So anyway, landing on that airport, there was nobody waiting for me, and I didn't speak the language. So just looking around, and then this little Indian guy comes up with a camera and says, "Good evening, sir, can I take your picture?" I'm like, okay, you speak the English, how good. Yes, you can take all the pictures you want, but I'm grabbing your hand and I'm not letting go until I get stuff sorted out. So with his help, we found a major of the Gurkhas who agreed to rent me his pickup truck, and that was the start of it. We managed to find this area that had all these containers and all these rub holes that were in the containers, all these prefabricated buildings were in the containers, so we could use all that. It was right next to the airport, which was very convenient. And I immediately noticed that same night, actually, when I was playing with the satellite dish, that we won't have enough bandwidth for all the people who will be coming in. Because I was expecting hundreds, if not thousands, of relief workers, humanitarians, to come in within the next couple of days. So once again, with my translator and with the help of the local office, we organized a meeting with the local telecommunication companies. That's like Orange and Claro here, right? There were 2 companies there as well, fierce competitors. But I was lucky, again, that the chief technical officer of one of the companies was a Hungarian guy. Now, I come from the same part of Europe, and when you're way out there, that kind of means something. There's an immediate bond. So I convinced the guy to give me 50 SIM cards, which I would be able to hand out to all the humanitarians as they arrived at the airport so that they could talk to each other. Because in Kathmandu, the communications were okay. There was cellular telephones, there was even internet on the phones. You could plug in your laptop and use this as a hotspot and get your job done. Now, with these 50 cards, I went to the other company, and they gave me 100, you know, to top the competition. And the next thing I did was I got one of them. In a couple of days, they showed up, and I could remove that satellite because they brought a fiber optic cable both to our location and to the airport. And that worked out great, right? The thing is, this Hungarian guy and most of the technical people that I worked with very closely there left that same afternoon. They left Kathmandu. They went out to the field all over the country to fix up their own towers, sub-offices, and whatnot. So my point here is, again, yeah, lucky, you make your own luck. But I took the initiative there. I went there immediately. There's a small window of time when you can act. And you either do it or you don't. And if you do it, you reap the rewards, possibly, which happened in this case, and that worked great. Yeah, this is also Nepal. Remember I started with my fear of heights? I had to cross that to get from one part of a village to another. That's what their bridges look like. Like I said, I'm still afraid of heights. I even got the job, in a way, due to this fear of heights. The phone rang at 4 in the morning, and I pick it up, and somebody says, "Are you afraid of heights?" I'm like, "What the hell? Who is this? It's 4 in the morning. Tell me, man, are you afraid of heights? This is so-and-so." Oh, okay, I remember. It was a guy from the UN who had offered me the job earlier. And I'm like, "Dude, can I think about this? What do you mean I'm afraid of heights?" "Look, man, I need to know now. I want to send you out to Colombia tomorrow. You're going to be going up in the mountains into FARC territory. You're going to be climbing towers. Are you afraid? Yes or no?" There's an opportunity there, right? So I had the guts and I said, "I don't know, but I'm willing to try." I ended up going to Colombia for my first mission, which was cool. They needed somebody who could speak Spanish, apparently. And my team leader fell through a roof, broke his leg close to the end of the mission, so I ended up even being a team leader on my first mission, which is quite a big thing. In any case, that was the beginning of a great job. And I think that this job, with all its opportunities, is very much like our life. Every day brings you opportunities. Every day you have a chance to do something. My job allowed me to visit a huge portion of the world. 76 countries, and some which I can't even find on the map anymore. That's your map. Fill it up.